Adrian Hayes's hand was shaking when he found the pregnancy test in his dead wife's drawer. Positive, dated 3 weeks after she'd already been buried. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was waking up this morning with his boss, Sienna Blake, CEO of Argent Infrastructure, lying next to him in his own bed, wearing his t-shirt with no memory of how she got there. And his 6-year-old daughter was knocking on the bedroom door. And his, "What happened that night will change everything you think you know about loyalty, betrayal, and the lies we bury to protect the people we love." Stay until the end and drop a comment with the city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. Hit subscribe and the bell so you don't miss what comes next. Adrian Hayes opened his eyes and immediately wished he hadn't. The ceiling fan was spinning too fast, or maybe his head was spinning too slow. Either way, the room tilted sideways and his stomach lurched like he'd been thrown off a boat. He pressed his palm against his forehead. His mouth tasted like copper and cheap bourbon. His shirt was gone. His belt was still on but unbuckled, hanging loose around his waist like it had given up on him too. "What the hell?" he muttered. He turned his head to the left and his entire body went cold. There was a woman in his bed. Not just any woman. Sienna Blake, his boss, the CEO of Argent Infrastructure. The woman who signed his paychecks, who ran board meetings with the precision of a military general who had never once looked at him as anything more than employee number 4071. She was lying on her side, facing away from him, wearing his old Steelers t-shirt. Her dark hair was fanned across his wife's pillow. Karen's pillow, the one he still hadn't moved after 2 years, and she was breathing softly, completely asleep. Adrian sat up so fast, the room blurred. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." Shate. He looked down at himself. Jeans still on, socks still on, belt unbuckled but pants buttoned. He checked the floor. Her black dress was draped over the chair by the window. Her heels were kicked off near the door, one upright one on its side. His phone was dead on the nightstand. The alarm clock read 6:47 a.m. And then the knock came. 3 small knocks. Soft. Patient. The way only a 6-year-old knocks. "Daddy?" "Mia." Adrian's heart slammed into his ribs. He threw the covers off and swung his legs over the side of the bed, moving fast, moving on pure adrenaline. "Just a second, sweetheart," he called out, keeping his voice steady even though his hands were trembling. "Daddy's getting dressed." "I'm hungry," Mia said through the door. "Can I have pancakes?" Yeah, pancakes. Give me 2 minutes." He heard her little footsteps pad away down the hallway, and he let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Behind him, Sienna stirred. She rolled onto her back and made a small sound, not quite a groan, not quite a sigh. Her eyes fluttered open, and she stared at the ceiling fan for about 3 seconds before her entire body went rigid. She sat up. She looked at Adrian. Adrian looked at her. Neither of them said anything for what felt like a full minute. Then Sienna looked down at the t-shirt she was wearing. She pulled the collar forward, read the faded Steelers logo, and let it drop. "Adrian," she said. Her voice was low, controlled, but he could hear the crack beneath it. "What happened?" "I don't know." "What do you mean you don't know?" I don't know, Sienna. I woke up 60 seconds before you did. I don't remember anything after." He stopped, pressed his fingers into his temples. "After the bar, Brady's. I was at Brady's with Jim and Dave." "I wasn't at Brady's," Sienna said. "Then how are you in my house?" She didn't answer. She pulled the covers up to her chest like a shield and looked around the room, the dresser, the closet, the framed photo of Karen and Mia on the nightstand. "Is that your wife?" she asked quietly. "Late wife," Adrian corrected. The words came out harder than he meant them to. "She passed 2 years ago. I'm sorry. Don't. Just let's figure out what happened." He stood up and grabbed a t-shirt from the dresser, pulling it over his head. His back was to her, but he could feel her watching him. The whole situation felt impossible. He had worked at Argent Infrastructure for 7 years. 7 years of keeping his head down, doing his job, collecting his check. He had spoken to Sienna Blake maybe a dozen times total, and most of those conversations were in conference rooms with 15 other people present. And now she was in his bed. "I need to go take care of my daughter," he said without turning around. "There's coffee in the kitchen. I'll make a pot. We'll talk after." "Adrian," he said firmly. He walked out and closed the door behind him. Mia was sitting at the kitchen table with her coloring book open, swinging her legs back and forth. She had already gotten herself a glass of water, which was sitting dangerously close to the edge of the table. Adrian moved it toward the center without thinking, an automatic reflex, the kind of muscle memory only parents develop. "Morning, baby girl." "Morning, Daddy. Your eyes are red." "Daddy didn't sleep great." "Did you have a bad dream?" Something like that. Then he opened the fridge and pulled out eggs milk, the half-empty bag of pancake mix from the cabinet. His hands were still shaking, so he gripped the mixing bowl tighter and focused on the motions. Crack the eggs, pour the milk, stir. Don't think, just stir. "Daddy." "Yeah?" "Whose shoes are by your door?" Adrian's hand stopped mid-stir. He set the bowl down slowly. "A friend from work," he said. "She had car trouble last night, and Daddy let her sleep in the guest room." The lie came out so smooth it scared him. When had he gotten good at lying to his daughter? "Oh," Mia said, already losing interest. "Can I have chocolate chips in my pancakes?" "Sure." He heard the bedroom door open down the hall. Footsteps. The bathroom door closing. Running water. 5 minutes later, Sienna appeared in the kitchen doorway. She had put her dress back on. Her hair was pulled into a quick knot at the back of her head. She looked different without makeup, younger somehow, and more human. At the office, she was always armor-plated, sharp suits, heels, a jawline that could cut glass. Here in his kitchen, in the morning light, she looked like someone who hadn't slept enough and was trying very hard not to fall apart. Mia looked up from her coloring book. "Hi," Mia said. "Are you Daddy's friend?" Sienna glanced at Adrian. He gave her the smallest nod. "I am," Sienna said. She smiled, and it was a real smile, the kind that started in the eyes. "I'm Sienna." "I'm Mia. I'm 6. 6? That's a great age." "I know. I can tie my shoes now." "That's very impressive." Adrian poured the first pancake onto the skillet and watched it bubble. The normalcy of this, his daughter chatting, the smell of batter, cooking, the morning light coming through the window, felt surreal against the chaos in his head. Sienna sat down at the table across from Mia. "Coffee?" Adrian asked without looking at her. "Please." He poured 2 cups, black for himself. He didn't know how she took hers, which struck him as oddly significant. He didn't even know how his own boss drank her coffee. "Black is fine," she said, reading his hesitation. He set the cup in front of her. Their fingers didn't touch, but they were close enough that he pulled his hand back too quickly, and they both noticed. Mia didn't notice. She was drawing a purple horse. Adrian flipped the pancake. "Mia, baby, can you go wash your hands before breakfast?" "They're clean." "Go wash them again." Mia sighed, the dramatic sigh of a child who has been deeply wronged, but she slid off her chair and padded toward the bathroom. The moment she was gone, Adrian turned to Sienna. "What's the last thing you remember?" he asked, keeping his voice low. Sienna wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. "I was at the Regency Hotel. There was a fundraiser. Victor Hale was there." "Victor Hale? Your VP of Operations?" "Yes. We had an argument, a bad one. She paused, took a breath. "I think I left. I must have called a car." But I don't remember getting in one. I don't remember giving anyone this address. I don't remember anything until I woke up in your bed. Were you drinking? One glass of wine, maybe two, not enough for this. Adrian leaned against the counter. I had more than that. Jim's retirement thing at Brady's. I had 4, maybe 5 bourbons. But I've had 5 bourbons before, and I've never blacked out. They looked at each other. Something's wrong, Sienna said. Yeah. This doesn't feel like a hangover, Adrian. This feels like... I know what it feels like. The word neither of them said hung in the air between them. Sienna set her coffee down. I need my phone. Have you seen my purse? Adrian shook his head. I haven't looked. Check the living room. She got up and walked out. He heard her moving things, couch cushions, the coat rack by the front door. She came back, holding a small black clutch. Found it by the front door, she said. She pulled out her phone and powered it on. Her face changed when the screen lit up. What? Adrian asked. 14 missed calls, all from Victor. Victor Hale has been calling you 14 times since last night. And 6 text messages. She scrolled through them, her expression shifting from confusion to something harder. Something like fear. What do they say? She held the phone out to him. He took it and read, 10:47 p.m. Where did you go? 10:52 p.m. Sienna, we need to finish this conversation. 11:15 p.m. You can't walk away from this. You know what I have. 11:38 p.m. I'm not bluffing. 12:02 a.m. Answer your phone. 12:44 a.m. You're going to regret this. Adrian read the last message twice. He handed the phone back. What does he have? Adrian asked. Sienna didn't answer right away. She sat back down and stared at the table. Records, she said finally. Financial records, from a project we did 3 years ago, the Mercer Bridge expansion. I worked on that project. I know. Sienna, what about the Mercer Bridge? She looked up at him, and for the first time since he'd known her, he saw genuine fear in her eyes. Not the controlled boardroom kind of concern. Real fear. The kind that lives in your chest. The numbers were changed, she said. The material costs, the subcontractor bids, they were altered before they went to the city. Someone pocketed the difference. Almost $2 million. Adrian felt the floor shift under his feet. And Victor knows. Victor did it, but he made sure the paper trail leads to me. Why? Because I found out 6 months ago, and instead of going to the board, I tried to handle it internally. I went to Victor directly. I told him to return the money, fix the records, and resign quietly. I gave him a chance. She laughed bitterly. He used that chance to build a case against me. Adrian set his coffee down. The pancakes were burning. He didn't care. So right now, he said slowly, there are documents out there that make it look like you, the CEO, stole $2 million from a public infrastructure project. Yes. And the guy who actually stole it has been calling you all night threatening you. Yes. And somehow in the middle of all this you ended up in my house, in my bed, and neither of us remembers how. Yes. Mia's voice floated down the hallway. Daddy, I washed my hands 2 times. Adrian closed his eyes. He gripped the edge of the counter until his knuckles went white. Coming, sweetheart, he called back. He turned off the stove. He scraped the burned pancake into the trash and poured a new one. His movements were mechanical, precise. This was what he did. When the world was falling apart, he made pancakes. When Karen was dying, he made pancakes. When the bills were overdue and the house was too quiet, and Mia asked where Mommy was, he made pancakes. You need to leave, he said quietly. Sienna flinched. Adrian, you need to leave before my daughter comes back in here and starts asking questions I can't answer. I understand that, but I need to tell you something first. You've told me enough. No, I haven't. She stood up. When I said the paper trail leads to me, it doesn't just lead to me. Your name is on some of those documents too. You were the field supervisor on Mercer Bridge. Victor used your sign-offs. Your initials are on the altered invoices. The mixing bowl nearly slipped from Adrian's hands. That's impossible. I signed off on what was put in front of me. I didn't alter anything. I know that. But Victor doesn't need you to have actually done it. He just needs it to look like you did. So I'm his insurance policy. You're his leverage against me. If I go to the board, he releases the documents. I go down. And so does every field supervisor whose name is on those papers, including you. Adrian set the bowl down. He turned to face her fully. I'm a single father, he said. I have a 6-year-old daughter. I have a mortgage. I have a life that depends on me showing up to that office every single day and keeping my head down. And you're telling me that some executive I've met twice is using my name to cover up a $2 million fraud? Yes. And you knew this. For how long? Sienna hesitated. How long, Sienna? 3 months. Adrian's jaw tightened. 3 months. You've known for 3 months that my name was on fraudulent documents, and you didn't tell me. I was trying to fix it before. Before what? Before I found out. Before I got arrested. Before my daughter had to watch her father get handcuffed. I was trying to protect you. You were trying to protect yourself. The words hit her like a slap. She took a step back. Mia appeared in the doorway, her hands held up like a surgeon. Clean, she announced proudly. Then she looked at Sienna, then at Adrian. Her smile faded. Daddy, are you mad? Adrian forced his face to relax. He knelt down and took her hands in his, inspecting them with exaggerated seriousness. Perfect job, baby girl. Cleanest hands in the whole state of Pennsylvania. Sit down, pancakes are almost ready. Mia climbed into her chair. She picked up her purple crayon but didn't start drawing. She just watched her father, the way children watch, when they know something is wrong but don't know what. Sienna picked up her clutch from the table. I should go. Yes, Adrian said. You should. She walked toward the front door. Adrian followed her, stopping at the edge of the hallway where Mia couldn't see them. I didn't come here to ruin your life, Sienna said quietly. She was standing by the door, her heels in one hand, looking nothing like a CEO. Looking like someone who had run out of options. Then why did you come? I told you. I don't remember. That's not good enough. I know it's not. She opened the door. The morning air came in cool and gray. But Adrian, whether you want to be involved or not, you already are. Victor will make sure of that. She stepped outside. He watched her walk down the front steps barefoot, her heels dangling from her fingers, and get into a black car that was idling at the curb. He hadn't noticed the car before. He didn't know if it had been there all night, or if she'd called it from the bathroom. The car pulled away. Adrian stood in the doorway for a long time. Then he went back inside, closed the door, and locked it. Mia was waiting at the table. The pancakes were ready. He put 3 on her plate and drizzled syrup in a smiley face the way she liked. Daddy. Yeah, baby. Your friend looked sad. She's just having a tough day. You should be nice to her. Adrian sat down across from his daughter. She was looking at him with Karen's eyes brown warm, painfully trusting. I'll try, he said. He watched her eat. He didn't touch his own food. After breakfast, after Mia was parked in front of the TV watching cartoons, Adrian went back to his bedroom. He plugged in his phone and waited for it to power on. When it finally came to life, he had 3 missed calls from Jim, 2 from Dave, and 1 from a number he didn't recognize. And 1 text message. From a blocked number. It said, "You should be more careful about who sleeps in your house, Adrian, especially with a daughter like Mia." He read it 3 times. Then he locked his phone, walked into the bathroom, and threw up. When he came back out, he sat on the edge of his bed, the bed that still smelled faintly of Sienna's perfume, and stared at the wall. Someone knew she had been here. Someone knew about Mia, and someone wanted him to know that they knew. He thought about calling the police. He thought about calling Jim. He thought about packing a bag and driving Mia to his mother's house in Ohio. Instead, he picked up his phone and called the one number he swore he'd never dial. Sienna answered on the first ring. "Adrian, the parking garage on 5th and Broad. 1 hour. Come alone." "What happened?" "Someone sent me a message about Mia, about my daughter. So whatever this is, whatever you've dragged me into, we're going to fix it. Today. Because if anything happens to her, Sienna, I swear to God, corporate scandal will be the least of anyone's problems." He hung up. In the living room, Mia laughed at something on the TV. The sound was bright and clean like a bell. Adrian sat in the silence of his bedroom, his fist pressed against his mouth, and made himself a promise. Whatever it took, whatever he had to do, whoever he had to become, that laugh was going to stay exactly the way it was. Nobody was going to take it from her. Not Victor Hale, not Sienna Blake, not the whole damn world. Adrian dropped Mia off at his neighbor's house 40 minutes later. Linda Marsh, 72 years old, retired school teacher, the kind of woman who kept butter cookies in a jar by the door and never asked questions she didn't need to ask. "Just a couple hours," Adrian said, crouching down to zip Mia's jacket. "Daddy has a work thing." "On a Saturday?" Linda asked from the doorway, one eyebrow raised. "You know how it is. I know how it is when a man shows up at my door looking like he hasn't slept and hasn't eaten." She put her hand on his shoulder. "Whatever it is, Adrian, eat something." "Yes, ma'am." He kissed Mia on the forehead. She grabbed his face with both hands the way she always did, her little fingers pressing into his cheeks. "You'll come back?" she asked. She asked this every time. Every single time he dropped her off anywhere. It had started after Karen died, this quiet, persistent fear that the people she loved would leave and not come back. "Always," he said. "Always, always, always." 3, always, she said, satisfied. She let go of his face and ran inside toward the cookie jar. Adrian drove to the parking garage on 5th and Broad with his hands gripping the wheel at 10 and 2, the way his father had taught him 30 years ago. His father had been a carpenter. Honest work, honest hands. The kind of man who believed that if you kept your head down and did your job, the world would leave you alone. Adrian had believed that too, right up until about 3 hours ago. Yeah, the parking garage was mostly empty. Saturday morning, downtown Pittsburgh, the office workers gone, and the shoppers not yet arrived. He pulled into a spot on the 3rd level and killed the engine. Sienna's car was already there. A silver Audi, clean and polished, parked 3 spaces away. She was sitting in the driver's seat, her phone pressed to her ear. When she saw him pull in, she ended the call and stepped out. She had changed clothes. Dark jeans, a gray sweater, sunglasses pushed up on her head. No heels. Flat boots. She looked like she was trying to be invisible, which for a woman who normally commanded every room she walked into was almost disorienting. Adrian got out and walked toward her. Neither of them said hello. "Show me," Sienna said. He pulled out his phone and handed it to her. She read the text from the blocked number. Her lips pressed together until they went white. "When did this come in?" she asked. "Sometime during the night. I didn't see it until after you left." "Have you called the police?" "And tell them what my boss was in my bed. I don't remember how, and now someone's threatening my kid. You know how that sounds." "It sounds like the truth." "The truth doesn't always sound good, Sienna." She handed his phone back. "This is Victor." "You don't know that." "I do know that. This is exactly how he operates. He doesn't attack you directly. He finds the thing you love most and he puts his hand near it. Not on it. Near it. Just close enough so you know he could. Adrian's jaw clenched. You're talking about my daughter like she's a chess piece. I'm talking about her like someone who has watched Victor Hale destroy 4 careers in 6 years. He got Jim Prescott's wife fired from her teaching job. He leaked photos from Paul Reinhardt's bachelor party to Paul's fiancée the week before the wedding. He found out that Dana Morrison's son had a shoplifting charge as a teenager and made sure the board heard about it during her promotion review. Sienna's voice was steady, but her eyes were not. He doesn't fight fair, Adrian. He doesn't fight clean. He finds the softest place, and he presses. And you let this man work for you for 6 years. I didn't let him. I managed him. There's a difference. Not from where I'm standing. That landed. He saw it hit her, saw the flicker of something shame, maybe, or recognition cross her face before she locked it down. You're right, she said quietly. I should have fired him years ago. I should have gone to the board the moment I found the Mercer Bridge discrepancies. I made a mistake. I'm trying to fix it. By dragging me into it. You were already in it, Adrian. You've been in it since the day you signed those invoices. I signed what was put in front of me. I've done that job the same way for 7 years. I check the materials, I verify the quantities, I sign the sheet. That's what a field supervisor does. I know. And under normal circumstances, that signature means nothing. But Victor altered the invoices after you signed them. He changed the numbers, and he was smart enough to do it in a way that makes it look like you were in on it from the beginning. Adrian turned away from her and leaned against his truck. He stared at the concrete wall of the parking garage. There was a crack running through it, a long diagonal line that started near the floor and climbed upward like a slow-motion fracture. How much are we talking about? He asked. The total discrepancy on the Mercer Bridge project was $1.8 million. And how much of that is tied to documents with my name on them? About $700,000. Adrian let out a sound that was half laugh, half groan. $700,000. I make $62,000 a year. I drive a truck with 140,000 miles on it. I'm behind on my water bill. And somewhere out there, there's a piece of paper that says I stole $700,000. That's why we need to move fast. We. He turned back to face her. There's no we, Sienna. 24 hours ago, you were my boss and I was your employee. We didn't have coffee together. We didn't eat lunch together. I didn't even know your middle name. Marie. What? My middle name? It's Marie? Sienna Marie Blake. She crossed her arms. And 24 hours ago doesn't matter anymore. What matters is right now. Victor is making his move. If we don't get ahead of him, he'll go to the board, he'll hand over those documents, and both of us will be standing in front of a federal prosecutor trying to explain something we didn't do. Federal. It was a public infrastructure project, Adrian. City funding, state grants. When you steal from a bridge project, you're stealing from taxpayers. That's federal. Adrian felt the ground shift again. Federal. Prison. Mia growing up without a father the way she was already growing up without a mother. I can't go to prison, he said, and his voice broke on the word in a way that embarrassed him. She doesn't have anyone else. Karen's parents are gone. My mom can barely take care of herself. If something happens to me, Mia goes into the system. Nothing is going to happen to you. You don't get to promise me that. I'm not promising. I'm telling you what I'm going to make sure of. Sienna took a step toward him. I didn't come to your house last night by accident. I don't believe that. Someone brought me there, or I went there for a reason. Either way, something connected us before we were ready for it. And right now, the only way either of us gets out of this is together. Adrian studied her face. He was looking for the CEO, the corporate operator, the woman who calculated every move 3 steps ahead. But what he saw was something else. Something raw and unguarded, like a person standing on the edge of a cliff and trying not to look down. What's your plan? He asked. Whoa, she let out a breath. The original documents, the real ones before Victor altered them, are stored on the company's internal server. Every version is backed up automatically. If we can access the original files and compare them to the ones Victor submitted to the city, the alterations will be obvious. Timestamps, metadata, user access logs. It'll show exactly who changed what and when. And you can't access them yourself. May. I could, but Victor knows I'm coming. He's already locked me out of the financial archive, changed the access permissions last week. I tried to get in Thursday night and got a system notification that my credentials had been revoked for that directory. The CEO got locked out of her own company's files. The CEO trusted her VP of Operations to manage the IT infrastructure, and the VP of Operations has been planning this for a very long time. Adrian rubbed his face with both hands. So who can access them? There are 3 people with master-level access to the server, Mai Victor, and the director of IT, Rachel Nguyen. Do you trust her? Sienna hesitated. That's not a good pause, Adrian said. Rachel and Victor dated for about 6 months 2 years ago. It ended badly. She transferred to the Seattle office for a year and then came back. They're civil now, but barely. Does she know about the Mercer Bridge? I don't think so, but I can't be sure. So we're betting everything on a woman who used to sleep with the guy who's trying to frame us. We're betting on the fact that Rachel is a good person who got burned by a bad one. In my experience, those people don't protect their ex-boyfriends. They bury them. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. A car drove past them on the level below its engine, echoing off the concrete walls. There's something else, he said. Last night, the blackout. You said you had 1 or 2 glasses of wine. I had 4 or 5 bourbons, but I've never blacked out like that. Not ever. If someone wanted us both in the same place, confused and compromised, that would be one hell of a way to do it. Sienna nodded slowly. I've been thinking the same thing. You think Victor drugged us? I think Victor is capable of it. But I don't know why he'd put me in your house. What does that accomplish? Leverage, Adrian said. The word tasted bitter. Photos, evidence, a CEO in her employee's bed. That's a harassment lawsuit. That's a scandal. That's every board member running for the exits. Sienna went very still. He needed something to keep you quiet, Adrian continued. The financial fraud is his offense. But if he has photos of you in my bed wearing my shirt, the whole thing looking exactly the way someone would want it to look, that's his defense. He can say you're the one with bad judgment. He can discredit you before you even open your mouth. And discredit you too, Sienna said. The grieving single father sleeping with his boss. How sympathetic does that look? Not very. They stood in the gray light of the parking garage, 2 people who had been strangers 12 hours ago, and were now bound together by something neither of them had chosen. I need to ask you something, Adrian said. And I need you to tell me the truth. Okay. Did anything happen between us last night? Sienna looked at him directly. I don't know, but I don't think so. Your pants were on. My dress was hung over a chair, not thrown on the floor. Your bed was made on one side like only one person had been sleeping in it. The other side just had me on top of the covers. On top of the covers? Adrian repeated. Yes. He thought about that. He thought about Karen's pillow and how he always slept on the left side and how the right side of the bed had been untouched for 2 years until this morning. Okay, he said. Okay. Here's what we're going to do. You're going to call Rachel Nguyen. Not text, not email. Call. And you're going to ask her to meet us somewhere private. Not the office, not a restaurant. Somewhere Victor can't reach. Where? My garage. I've got a workbench and a laptop and a door that locks. It's not glamorous, but it's mine, and nobody from Argent Infrastructure has ever set foot in it. Sienna almost smiled. Your garage. You got a better idea? No, I really don't. Good. Call Rachel. Tell her it's urgent. Tell her it's about Victor. And Sienna. What? Tell her to check her drink the next time she's at a company event. Sienna pulled out her phone and started dialing. Adrian got back in his truck and sat there for a moment watching her through the windshield. She was pacing slowly, the phone pressed to her ear, her free hand gesturing as she talked. He couldn't hear the words, but he could read the tension in her shoulders, the tight line of her spine. His phone buzzed. Another text from Jim. "Hey brother, you disappeared last night. Dave said you left with some woman. You dog, call me." Adrian stared at the message. Left with some woman. He didn't remember leaving with anyone. He didn't remember leaving at all. He typed back, "Who was the woman?" Jim's response came 30 seconds later. "Don't know. Dark hair. Nice car. She came into Brady's around 10, talked to you at the bar for maybe 5 minutes, then you both left. Dave figured you were having a good night for once. Were you?" Adrian's stomach tightened. Sienna had come to Brady's. She'd come to the bar where he was drinking, talked to him, and then they'd left together. But she said she didn't remember being at Brady's. She said the last thing she remembered was the fundraiser at the Regency Hotel. Either she was lying or she genuinely didn't remember going to the bar. And if she didn't remember, that meant whatever happened to her memory happened before Brady's. At the fundraiser, where Victor was. He got out of his truck. Sienna was just hanging up the phone. "Rachel will meet us at 4 o'clock, she said. She wasn't happy about it, but she agreed. "Good. Now tell me about the fundraiser last night. Everything you remember, every detail." "I already told you. You told me you argued with Victor and then you left. But my buddy Jim says a woman matching your description walked into Brady's bar at 10 o'clock and talked to me for 5 minutes before we left together." Sienna's face went blank. "That's not possible. I wasn't at any bar. Dark hair, nice car, 5-minute conversation, then we left." "Adrian, I'm telling you I don't remember any of that." "What time was the fundraiser?" "It started at 7. I arrived at 7:30. "And what time did you argue with Victor?" "I don't know exactly. 9:15. "And what happened after the argument?" Sienna pressed her fingers to her temples. "I left the ballroom. I went to the hotel lobby. I was going to call a car. And then..." She trailed off. Her hands dropped to her sides. "And then nothing. It's blank. The next thing I remember is waking up in your bed." "So from about 9:15 at the Regency Hotel to 6:47 this morning in my house, you have no memory?" "No." "That's almost 10 hours, Sienna." "I know. And at some point during those 10 hours, you drove to a bar across town, walked up to an employee you barely know, had a 5-minute conversation, and left with him." "I know how it sounds." "It sounds like someone put you on a path, like someone pointed you in a direction and let you walk." Sienna leaned against her car. Victor was at the bar. "What?" "Before the fundraiser, at the pre-event cocktail hour, he was bragging about knowing all the good bars in town. He mentioned Brady's by name. He said the bourbon there was the best in Pittsburgh." "Did he know I'd be at Brady's?" "Jim's retirement party was on the company calendar. HR sent out an email about it last week. Anyone at Argent could have seen it." Adrian felt the pieces clicking together, not like a puzzle coming clear, but like a trap, snapping shut, the sound of it metallic and final. "He got to you at the fundraiser," Adrian said slowly. "Something in your drink, something to make you suggestible. Then he pointed you toward Brady's knowing I'd be there. He probably got to my drink too, had someone slip something in while I was talking to Jim. And then he let chemistry and confusion do the rest. And took pictures," Sienna said. "And sent me that text about Mia. To make sure we both knew the stakes." They stood there, the full architecture of Victor Hale's plan laid out between them like a blueprint. It was elegant in its cruelty. Two people waking up in bed together with no memory, both compromised, both afraid, both with too much to lose. The kind of trap that worked because the victims were too ashamed to fight back. "He doesn't know us very well," Adrian said. Sienna looked at him. "He thinks I'm going to crawl into a hole because I'm scared," Adrian said. He thinks you're going to fold because your reputation is on the line. He's counting on us being embarrassed. He's counting on us being alone." Adrian straightened up. "I've buried a wife, Sienna. I've held my daughter while she screamed for her mother at 3 in the morning. I've sat in a hospital room and watched the person I loved most in this world take her last breath. Victor Hale thinks a text message is going to break me." His voice was steady now. Whatever fear had been rattling around inside him had hardened into something else, something with edges. 4 o'clock, he said. "Your car or mine?" "Mine," Sienna said. "Less conspicuous." "Nothing about today is conspicuous." He opened his truck door. "I need to pick up my daughter. I'll meet you at my house at 3:30. Park around the block." He started the engine. Before he pulled out, Sienna knocked on his window. He rolled it down. "Adrian." "Yeah." "Thank you for not walking away." He looked at her for a long moment. "I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for Mia. Don't confuse the two." He rolled the window up and drove away. In his rearview mirror, Sienna stood in the empty parking garage, her phone in her hand, watching him go. She looked small against the concrete. She looked alone. Adrian turned the corner, and she disappeared from view. He drove to Linda's house with the radio off, the only sound the engine, and his own breathing. His mind was working through every angle, every variable, every worst-case scenario. He was a field supervisor. He was trained to assess risk, to identify structural weaknesses, to look at a bridge and know exactly where it would break. Right now, he was looking at his own life, and he could see the cracks. But cracks could be repaired. That was the thing people forgot. A crack wasn't a collapse. A crack was a warning. And if you caught it early enough, if you reinforced the right places, if you poured everything you had into holding the structure together, it held. He pulled into Linda's driveway and killed the engine. Through the front window, he could see Mia sitting on the couch, a cookie in each hand, laughing at something Linda was saying. Adrian sat in his truck and watched his daughter laugh, and he made himself remember that sound, storing it somewhere deep and unbreakable inside his chest. Then he got out, walked to the door, and knocked 3 times. Mia fell asleep on the drive home, her head tilted against the car seat. One cookie still clutched in her fist like a treasure she refused to surrender, even in dreams. Adrian carried her inside and laid her on the couch, pulling the blanket up to her chin. He stood there for a moment, watching her breathe, counting the rise and fall of her chest, the way he used to count Karen's in those final weeks when every breath felt borrowed. His phone read 2:47 p.m., 43 minutes until Sienna arrived. 43 minutes to figure out what he was going to say to Rachel Nguyen, a woman he had never met, about a conspiracy he barely understood in a garage that still smelled like sawdust and motor oil. He went to the garage and started clearing space. He moved the toolboxes off the workbench, folded up the canvas drop cloth he'd been using to refinish Mia's bookshelf, and dragged a couple of old folding chairs out from behind the lawnmower. He set up his laptop on the workbench and plugged it in. The screen glowed blue in the dim light. He looked at the space. It was pathetic. 3 folding chairs, a workbench, and a laptop. This was supposed to be their war room. He thought about Victor Hale sitting in his corner office at Argent Infrastructure, surrounded by glass and chrome, and a legal team that probably cost more per hour than Adrian made in a week. Then he thought about Karen. She used to tell him that the size of the fight mattered more than the size of the fighter. She said that on their first date when he told her he was just a construction worker, and she was finishing her master's degree in education. She had laughed and said, "Adrian, you build bridges. I just talk about books. Which one of us is actually holding the world together?" He missed her so much it felt like a physical wound, a hole in his chest that the air whistled through. At 3:28, his phone buzzed. Sienna. Parked on Maple 2 houses down, coming to the back. He unlocked the side door of the garage. A minute later, she slipped in. She had changed again, darker clothes. A baseball cap he was fairly certain she had never worn before in her life. She looked like a CEO who had watched one too many spy movies. "Nice hat," he said. Don't. Coffee, I've got a pot inside. I've had 6 cups today. If I have another one, my hands will shake too hard to type. Fair enough? She looked around the garage. She didn't say anything about the folding chairs, or the sawdust, or the oil stain on the floor. She just sat down and opened her own laptop. Rachel will be here at 4, she said. I told her to park on the street behind us and come through the backyard. You're enjoying this. Sienna looked up. Enjoying what? The cloak and dagger stuff. Parking on different streets, coming through back doors. I'm terrified, Adrian. I haven't enjoyed anything since I woke up in your bed this morning. That shut him up. They sat in silence for a few minutes, both staring at their screens without really seeing them. Adrian pulled up the Mercer Bridge project files on his laptop, the ones he had saved locally, the field reports and daily logs he always kept copies of. It was a habit from his early days in construction, when a foreman told him that the smartest thing a man could do was keep his own records. I've got my field logs from the entire Mercer Bridge project, he said. Every daily report, every material delivery receipt, every inspection sign-off. 214 days of documentation. That's thorough. My old foreman used to say paper is the only thing that fights for you when you're not in the room. Smart man. He was an alcoholic who lost his house in a poker game, but yeah, he had his moments. Sienna almost laughed. It was the closest thing to a normal human sound he'd heard from her all day. Can I see the sign-off sheets? She asked. The ones Victor supposedly altered? Adrian opened the folder and turned the laptop toward her. She leaned in, scrolling through the documents. Her eyes moved fast, the way someone reads when they've spent 20 years looking at spreadsheets and contracts. Here, she said, pointing at the screen. October 14th, material delivery for the deck reinforcement. Your sign-off says 42 tons of grade 60 rebar at $418 per ton. That's what was delivered. I watched the trucks come in. The invoice that went to the city says 61 tons at $512 per ton. That's a difference of almost $12,000 on a single line item. $12,000. Adrian stared at the numbers. On one delivery. There are 47 altered line items across the entire project. Some are small, a few $100s here and there. Some are like this one. It adds up. To 1.8 million. To 1.8 million. Adrian sat back in his chair. The metal frame creaked under his weight. And my signature is on the original delivery receipt, which means someone could argue I knew the real numbers and helped cook the books. That's exactly what Victor will argue. Even though my numbers match the truth, and his numbers are the lie. The problem isn't the truth, Adrian. The problem is the story. Victor's story is simple. The field supervisor and the CEO conspired to inflate costs on a public project and pocket the difference. It's clean, it's easy to understand, and it gives a jury 2 villains. The truth is more complicated, and complicated doesn't play well in court. A knock on the side door. 3 soft raps. Adrian and Sienna both froze. Then Adrian stood, walked to the door, and opened it. Rachel Nguyen was smaller than he expected. 5'3", maybe 5'4", with short black hair and wire-rimmed glasses. She was wearing a pit sweatshirt and jeans, and she was holding a messenger bag against her chest, like a shield. She looked at Adrian, then she looked past him at Sienna, then back at Adrian. You must be the field supervisor, she said. Adrian Hayes. Rachel Nguyen. She didn't shake his hand. She stepped inside and waited for him to close the door. Sienna said this was about Victor. It's about a lot of things, Sienna said from her chair. But yes, Victor is at the center of it. Rachel sat down in the third folding chair, placing her messenger bag on the workbench. She folded her hands in her lap and looked at Sienna with an expression Adrian couldn't quite read. Not hostile, not friendly. Guarded. Before you start, Rachel said, I want to be clear about something. I haven't spoken to Victor in 4 months. Whatever he's doing, I'm not part of it. I know that, Sienna said. And I want to know why you called me instead of going to the board, or the police, or your army of lawyers. Bow. Sienna took a breath. Because the board will take 3 months to investigate, by which time Victor will have destroyed every piece of evidence. The police will take even longer. My lawyers will bill me $400 an hour to tell me to wait for the board and the police. And in the meantime, Victor will leak enough information to ruin both me and Adrian before anyone with the authority to stop him even picks up a phone. Rachel looked at Adrian. And you, what's your stake in this? My name is on documents I didn't alter, and this morning someone sent me a text message mentioning my 6-year-old daughter by name. Rachel's expression shifted. The guardedness cracked just a little, and underneath it was something that looked like recognition. Like she had heard this kind of story before. He threatened your daughter, she asked. Not directly. It was more like a reminder that he knows where she is. That's very Victor, Rachel said quietly. She unfolded her hands and gripped the edge of her chair. He did something similar to me. Not a child, I don't have children. But he found out that my mother was undocumented. She came here from Vietnam in 1983, and her paperwork was never fully resolved. Victor told me very casually over dinner one night that immigration enforcement had been really active lately. He said it like it was small talk, like he was commenting on the weather. The garage was silent. Adrian could hear Mia's cartoons playing faintly through the wall that connected the garage to the house. That's why you broke up with him, Adrian said. That's why I transferred to Seattle. I didn't just break up with him. I ran. Rachel pushed her glasses up on her nose. But I came back. Because my mother is here, and my life is here, and I decided I was done running from a man who uses fear like a credit card. Sienna leaned forward. Rachel, I need access to the financial archive on the Argent server, the original Mercer Bridge files. Victor locked me out last week. I know. I saw the access change in the system log. You saw it. I'm the director of IT Sienna. I see everything that happens on that server. Every permission change, every file modification, every login. Rachel opened her messenger bag and pulled out a tablet. I also see when someone accesses the archive at 2 in the morning on a Tuesday and downloads 400 megabytes of data onto an external drive. Victor. 3 weeks ago, he pulled everything, the original files, the modified versions, the submission records, all of it. So he has copies. He has his copies. But here's what he doesn't know. Rachel tapped her tablet screen and turned it toward them. Every file on the Argent server has a shadow backup. It runs automatically every 6 hours and stores to a separate partition that isn't accessible through the normal directory. It was part of a disaster recovery system I implemented 2 years ago. The shadow backups are on a different server behind a different firewall with access credentials that only I have. Adrian looked at the screen. He didn't understand most of what he was seeing, lines of code, timestamps, file paths, but he understood the look on Sienna's face. She looked like someone who had just been thrown a lifeline. You have the originals, Sienna said. I have every version of every file that has ever existed on the Argent server going back 4 years, including the Mercer Bridge files, including the originals before Victor altered them, and including the system logs that show exactly when the alterations were made, from which terminal, and with which user credentials. Victor's credentials. Victor's credentials, logged in from his office terminal at 11:47 p.m. on March 8, 2 years ago. 43 file modifications over a period of approximately 90 minutes. Rachel took her tablet back. He was careful. He changed the numbers, gradually spread across multiple documents, small enough that a routine audit wouldn't catch it. But he made one mistake. What? Adrian asked. He forgot that the shadow backup timestamps are recorded in UTC, not local time. He adjusted the file modification dates on the main server to make it look like the changes happened months earlier during the active phase of the project, but the shadow backups recorded the real time. March 8th, 2 years ago. 8 months after the project was completed, and the final invoices had already been submitted. So the files were changed after the project was done, Adrian said. After I had already signed off. After the invoices were already with the city. Exactly. Your signatures were on the originals. The originals were correct. Victor changed them later, and the shadow backups prove it. Adrian put his hands on the workbench and lowered his head. He stayed like that for a long moment, breathing slowly, feeling something release in his chest that he hadn't even realized was clenched. This clears me, he said. This clears both of you, Rachel said. But only if we move before Victor realizes the shadow backups exist. How do we get them? Sienna asked. I need to be physically at the server room. The shadow partition is air-gapped from the external network for security. I can't access it remotely. I need to plug in directly and pull the data onto a secure drive. The server room is in the Argent building, downtown, with security cameras and badge access, and a night guard named Phil who reports directly to Victor's office manager. I know, Rachel said. That's why we can't do this during business hours. And we can't do it at night, because Phil does his rounds every 45 minutes, and the server room is on his route. Then when? Adrian asked. Tomorrow morning, Sunday. Phil's shift ends at 6 a.m. and the day security doesn't start until 8. There's a 2-hour window where the building is monitored by cameras, only no physical guard. And the cameras... Rachel looked at him with the smallest hint of a smile. I'm the director of IT, Adrian. The cameras run on the same network I manage. I can loop the server room feed for 30 minutes without anyone noticing. That sounds illegal, Adrian said. So does framing 2 people for a crime they didn't commit. So does threatening a 6-year-old girl. So does drugging your CEO and your field supervisor to manufacture a blackmail scenario. Rachel's voice had gone hard. I've spent 2 years watching Victor Hale operate from the shadows using people's fear and decency against them. I kept my head down because I was afraid for my mother. I stayed quiet because I told myself it wasn't my fight. She looked at Sienna, then at Adrian. It's my fight. Sienna reached across the workbench and put her hand on Rachel's arm. Thank you. Rachel looked at Sienna's hand like she wasn't sure what to do with the gesture. Then she nodded once. There's something else, Rachel said. She pulled a USB drive from her messenger bag and held it up. I started building my own file 6 months ago. After I saw the access patterns on Victor's account, I began documenting everything. Login times, file modifications, email metadata. I don't have the content of his emails. Those are encrypted, but I have the timestamps, the recipients, and the subject lines. Why? Adrian asked. If you were trying to stay out of it, why start documenting? Rachel set the USB drive on the workbench. Because of Dana Morrison. Who's Dana Morrison? She was a senior project manager at Argent, Sienna said quietly. She left the company about a year ago. She didn't leave, Rachel said. She was destroyed. Victor leaked her son's juvenile record to the board during her promotion review. The board didn't officially use it against her, but the damage was done. She withdrew her name and resigned 2 weeks later. Rachel's voice was steady, but her hands were not. Dana was my friend. She was a good person and a great engineer, and Victor crushed her because she asked too many questions about the Mercer Bridge budget. The room got very quiet. She was getting close to the fraud, Adrian said. She was getting close, and Victor eliminated her before she could connect the dots. After that, I decided I was going to be ready. If the moment ever came, if someone finally stood up, I was going to have the ammunition. She tapped the USB drive. This is 6 months of ammunition. Adrian picked up the USB drive and turned it over in his hand. It was small and black and weighed almost nothing. It was strange how the things that could change your life were always so small. Tomorrow morning, he said. 6 to 8 a.m. The server room. I'll go in alone, Rachel said. 2 of you walking into the building on a Sunday morning raises questions. One IT director running a routine maintenance check does not. I don't like you going alone, Sienna said. I've been alone in this for 2 years, Sienna. One more morning won't kill me. What if Victor is watching the building? Then we'll know, and we'll deal with it. Adrian's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out and felt his blood go cold. Another text from the blocked number. 3 people in a garage. Interesting. Say hello to Rachel for me. He held the phone up so Sienna and Rachel could both see it. Rachel read it and her face drained of color. He knows? Rachel whispered. Adrian was already on his feet. He moved to the side door and opened it, stepping into the backyard. He scanned the houses behind his property, the alley, the fence line. Nothing. No one. He came back inside. He doesn't necessarily know, Adrian said, forcing his voice to stay even. He could be guessing. He knows Sienna would come to me after this morning. He knows Rachel is the only person who can access those files. 3 people in a garage isn't surveillance, it's logic. Or he has someone watching your house, Rachel said. Or that. Sienna stood up. We're not changing the plan. If Victor knows we're working together, that means he's scared. And scared people make mistakes. Scared people also do desperate things, Rachel said. Then we move faster. Sienna looked at both of them. Rachel, can you do it tonight instead of tomorrow morning? Rachel hesitated. Phil is still on duty until 6 a.m. What about the loading dock? The one on the east side of the building. There's no camera coverage on the service entrance. There's a keypad lock. The code is 7729, Victor's birthday. He said it himself and he's never changed it because he doesn't think anyone would try. Rachel stared at her. You know his birthday. I know everything about every executive in my company. That's my job. Rachel considered this for a long moment. Then she put her tablet back in her messenger bag and zipped it shut. 11 p.m. tonight, Rachel said. I'll need exactly 20 minutes inside the server room. I'll text you when I'm in and when I'm out. Use a burner, Adrian said. If Victor is monitoring your phone. I have 3 burners, Rachel said flatly. I told you, I've been preparing for this. Tie. She stood up and slung the bag over her shoulder. She looked at Adrian, then at Sienna, and something passed between the 3 of them. Not friendship, not yet, but the grim solidarity of people who had been cornered and were choosing to fight instead of fold. One more thing, Rachel said from the doorway. That text he sent about your daughter Adrian. I want you to know something. What? Victor Hale is a coward. He threatens because he's afraid to act. In the 2 years I was with him, I watched him threaten dozens of people. He never once followed through. He's a bully with a spreadsheet. She adjusted her glasses. But you should still lock your doors tonight. She slipped out through the backyard and was gone. Adrian locked the side door. He turned to Sienna, who was still standing by the workbench, staring at the spot where Rachel had been sitting. Do you trust her? Adrian asked. More than I trusted her this morning. That's not a ringing endorsement. It's the best I've got. Adrian checked his phone again. The text from the blocked number stared back at him. 3 people in a garage. He turned the phone face down on the workbench. Through the wall he heard Mia's voice calling from the living room. Daddy, I'm hungry again. Hungry. Adrian closed his eyes. When he opened them, Sienna was watching him with an expression he couldn't name, something between admiration and sorrow. Go feed your daughter, she said. I'll clean up in here. He walked to the door that led into the house, then stopped. Sienna. Yeah, Mamte. When this is over, whatever happens, I want you to know something. The only reason I'm in this garage, the only reason I answered your call, the only reason I'm risking everything I have is because a man I've never met said my daughter's name like he had the right to. That's it. That's the whole reason. I know, she said. Good, because when we get to the other side of this, and we will get to the other side, I need you to remember that. I'm not your ally because you're my boss. I'm not your ally because of whatever happened last night. I'm your ally because Victor Hale made the worst mistake of his life. What mistake? He said Mia's name. Adrian walked through the door and closed it behind him. Mia was standing in the living room, her blanket wrapped around her shoulders like a cape, her hair sticking up in 6 directions. Can we have grilled cheese? She asked. We can have grilled cheese. With the crusts cut off. With the crusts cut off. She took his hand and pulled him toward the kitchen with all the urgency a 6-year-old could muster, which was considerable. Adrian let himself be pulled. He let her tiny hand anchor him to the present moment, to the smell of butter in a pan, to the ordinary miracle of making lunch for his daughter on a Saturday afternoon. Behind the garage door, he heard Sienna's car start and pull away. Then, somewhere across the city, Victor Hale was sending texts and pulling strings and believing he had already won. And somewhere between a grilled cheese sandwich and a locked garage, Adrian Hayes was becoming someone he had never been before. Not just a father protecting his daughter, but a man who had decided fully and finally that he was done being afraid. The grilled cheese was cold before Adrian ate it. He had cut Mia's crusts off, poured her a glass of apple juice, sat across from her at the kitchen table, and watched her eat while his own sandwich sat untouched on the plate. His stomach was a fist. Every few minutes, his eyes drifted to his phone on the counter, waiting for it to light up, waiting for another text from a blocked number. Mia noticed. "Daddy, you're not eating." "I'm not that hungry, baby. Linda says you have to eat or your body gets grumpy." "Linda's a smart lady. Eat your sandwich." He picked it up and took a bite. It tasted like cardboard and butter. He chewed and swallowed and smiled at his daughter, and she smiled back, satisfied that the world was operating according to the rules she understood. At 6:15, he gave her a bath. At 7 o'clock, he read her 2 chapters of Charlotte's Web, the same book Karen had been reading to her before she died. They were on chapter 14 now, the one where Charlotte is getting tired, and Mia asked the question she always asked. Is Charlotte going to die? What do you think? I think she's tired because she worked too hard. I think she needs a nap. Maybe. Let's find out tomorrow night. Daddy. Yeah. Do spiders go to heaven? Adrian's throat tightened. I think everything that loves something goes to heaven. Did Mommy love me? More than anything in the whole world. Then she's in heaven. Yeah, baby. She's in heaven. He kissed her forehead and turned off the lamp. She was asleep in 3 minutes, the effortless sleep of a child who trusts that the person standing guard will keep the darkness away. Adrian walked downstairs and locked every door in the house. Front door, back door, garage door, the sliding door to the patio. He checked every window on the first floor. Then he sat down at the kitchen table with his phone in front of him and waited. At 9:22, Sienna called. Rachel just texted from her burner, Sienna said. Her voice was tight-controlled. She's going in at 11. She wants us monitoring the building cameras remotely. I thought she said the cameras run on the internal network. She set up a remote access tunnel this afternoon. She's been busy. There was a pause. She sent me a link. I can see the lobby, the east corridor, and the loading dock on my laptop. Send it to me. Adrian, I don't think... Send it to me. I'm not sitting in my kitchen staring at the wall for 2 hours while someone else takes the risk. She sent the link. He opened it on his laptop, and 4 grainy camera feeds appeared on the screen. The Argent Infrastructure building looked empty. Lobby lights dimmed hallways. Dark, the loading dock lit by a single overhead lamp that cast a yellow cone on the concrete. He could see Phil, the security guard, sitting at the front desk, leaning back in his chair, reading something on his phone. I see Phil, Adrian said. He usually falls asleep around 10:30, Sienna said. Rachel confirmed it. She's been watching the security patterns for weeks. Of course she has. They stayed on the phone. Neither of them spoke much. It was the kind of silence that exists between people who are sharing a weight too heavy for conversation. The silence of hospital waiting rooms and courthouses, and the hours before something irreversible happens. At 10:38, Phil's head dropped forward. His phone slipped from his hand into his lap. He didn't move. He's out, Adrian said. Rachel sees it too. She just texted. She's moving to the loading dock now. Adrian watched the loading dock camera. For 3 minutes, nothing happened. Then a figure appeared at the edge of the frame, small and quick, wearing dark clothes and carrying a messenger bag. Rachel. She moved to the keypad, punched in 7729, and the door clicked open. She slipped inside, and the door closed behind her. "She's in," Adrian said. "I know. I'm watching." "I know. I'm Todd." Adrian switched to the East Corridor camera. He could see Rachel moving through the hallway, her footsteps silent, her bag pressed against her side. She reached the server room door, badged in, and disappeared inside. "She's in the server room," he said. 20 minutes, Sienna said. "That's all she needs." The next 20 minutes were the longest of Adrian's life. He stared at the camera feeds with an intensity that made his eyes burn. He checked every angle, every shadow, every flicker of movement. Phil was still asleep at the front desk. The lobby was empty. The East Corridor was empty. The loading dock was empty. At 10:51, his phone buzzed. A text from Sienna. "Adrian, look at the lobby camera." He looked. Phil was still in his chair, still sleeping. But behind him, near the elevator bank, there was a light. A faint glow like a phone screen moving in the darkness. Someone else was in the building. "I see it," Adrian said into the phone. "That's not Phil. Phil is at the desk." "Who is it?" "I don't know. The camera angle isn't clear enough." The light moved. It drifted from the elevator bank toward the East Corridor, the same corridor Rachel had taken to the server room. Adrian's entire body went cold. "Sienna, someone is heading toward the server room." "I see it. I'm texting Rachel." "Tell her to get out, right now." "I'm texting her." Adrian watched the glow move down the corridor. It was slow, deliberate, the movement of someone who knew exactly where they were going. The camera feed was too grainy to make out a face, just a shape and a light. "Did she respond?" Adrian asked. "Not yet." "Sienna." "She's not responding." Adrian stood up from the kitchen table. His chair scraped against the floor. Every instinct in his body was telling him to move, to do something, to drive to that building and physically pull Rachel out of there. "How far is the building from my house?" he asked. 15 minutes. "I can make it in 10. "Adrian, you can't leave Mia alone." That stopped him. He was halfway to the front door, his keys already in his hand, and Sienna's words hit him like a wall. He couldn't leave his daughter sleeping in an empty house at 11 o'clock at night while he drove across the city to confront God knew who in a dark office building. He stood in his hallway, his keys digging into his palm, trapped between two impossible choices. "I'll go," Sienna said. "I'm already in my car. I'm 10 minutes away." "No. If Victor is in that building, then I need to face him. This is my company, my mess, my responsibility." "Sienna, listen to me. I'm already driving, Adrian. Stay on the line. Watch the cameras. Be my eyes." He heard her engine accelerate. He walked back to the kitchen table and sat down in front of the laptop, his heart hammering so hard he could feel it in his teeth. On the camera feed, the glow had stopped moving. It was stationary now, halfway down the East Corridor, maybe 30 feet from the server room door. "The person stopped," Adrian said. "They're standing in the corridor." "Can you see them?" "Not clearly. The camera resolution is garbage." "Is the server room door still closed?" "Yes." "Then Rachel is still inside." Adrian checked his phone again. Nothing from Rachel's burner. Nothing from the blocked number. The silence was almost worse than a threat. On the lobby camera, Phil stirred in his chair. He shifted, scratched his head, and went still again. "Sienna, how far are you?" 6 minutes. "The person in the corridor hasn't moved." "They're waiting." "For what?" "For Rachel to come out." Adrian's hand was shaking. He steadied it against the table and kept his eyes on the screen. The figure in the corridor was just a dark smudge with a faint glow standing perfectly still like a predator outside a den. Then the server room door opened. Rachel stepped out. She had her messenger bag slung over her shoulder and a small hard drive in her hand. She turned left toward the loading dock and took 2 steps before she saw the figure in the corridor. She stopped. Charrier. Adrian couldn't hear anything. The cameras had no audio, but he could see Rachel's body language change. Her shoulders went rigid. She took a step backward. The figure moved toward her. Sienna, she's out of the server room. Someone is confronting her in the corridor. I'm 3 minutes away. You don't have 3 minutes. On the screen, the figure stepped closer to Rachel. They were face to face now, maybe 4 feet apart. Rachel was holding the hard drive behind her back. The figure raised a hand and pointed at her, then at the messenger bag. He wants the drive, Adrian said. He's pointing at her bag. Rachel shook her head. Even through the grainy camera feed, Adrian could see the defiance in the way she planted her feet. She wasn't giving it up. The figure reached for the bag. Rachel pulled away, and then the figure grabbed her arm. He's got her, Adrian said, his voice rising. Sienna, he grabbed her arm. I'm pulling in now. East side. East side. Loading dock. The code is 7729. He heard Sienna's car door slam. He heard her footsteps fast on concrete. He heard the beep of a keypad. On the screen, Rachel was struggling. She had wrenched her arm free, but the figure was blocking the corridor standing between her and the loading dock exit. She backed away toward the server room. The figure followed. Then a second figure appeared on the loading dock camera. Sienna. She was running through the dock area toward the east corridor door. She pushed through it and disappeared from the dock feed. Adrian switched to the corridor camera. Sienna appeared at the far end of the hallway behind the figure who was advancing on Rachel. She was moving fast, her footsteps echoing even in the silent feed. The figure turned. And for the first time, the camera caught enough of the face for Adrian to see who it was. It wasn't Victor Hale. It was a woman. Tall blonde wearing a dark coat. Adrian had never seen her before. Sienna stopped. She clearly recognized the woman because her entire body went rigid, just as Rachel's had moments before. Sienna, Adrian said into the phone. Who is that? Sienna's voice came through, strained, half-whispered. That's Claire. Claire Whitfield. She's Victor's attorney. His attorney is in the building at 11 o'clock at night grabbing employees. She's not just his attorney, she's his partner, in everything. Claire is the one who set up the shell companies that funneled the Mercer Bridge money. Victor is the muscle. Claire is the architect. On the screen, the 3 women stood in the corridor frozen in a triangle of confrontation. Claire was between Rachel and Sienna, her head turning from one to the other. Then Claire spoke. Adrian couldn't hear the words, but he could read Sienna's reaction. She flinched. Whatever Claire said hit hard. Sienna responded. She stepped forward, closing the distance between herself and Claire. Her hands were at her sides, her chin lifted. She looked the way she looked in board meetings, controlled, precise, dangerous. Claire said something else. She gestured toward Rachel's bag, then toward Sienna. Then she pulled out her phone and held it up, showing them something on the screen. Rachel's hand went to her mouth. What is she showing them? Adrian muttered. He leaned closer to the laptop, but the camera resolution was too poor. He could see the glow of Claire's phone screen, but not the image on it. His own phone buzzed, a text from Sienna's number, but it wasn't from Sienna. It was a forwarded image. He opened it. It was a photograph, taken from outside his house through the bedroom window in the early morning light. It showed Sienna lying in his bed wearing his t-shirt, her dark hair spread across the pillow. And it showed Adrian sleeping next to her, his face turned toward her, his arm extended across the mattress in a gesture that looked from the angle of the photograph like he was reaching for her. Underneath the photo, a text from Claire's number. How does this look to a jury? Sienna. How does it look to his daughter? Adrian's vision went red. He gripped the edge of the table so hard the wood creaked. Every cell in his body wanted to drive to that building, walk into that corridor, and physically remove Claire Whitfield from the building, from the state, from the planet. But Mia was sleeping upstairs. Mia was sleeping, and he was her only wall between the world and her. He texted Sienna, "I saw the photo. Don't react. She wants you to react. Get the drive and get out." On the camera feed, he saw Sienna check her phone. She read his message. Her posture changed. The tension in her shoulders dropped by a fraction. She put her phone away and looked at Claire. Then Sienna did something Adrian didn't expect. She laughed. It wasn't a nervous laugh or a defeated laugh. It was the laugh of a woman who had been underestimated for the last time. She threw her head back and laughed, and even through the silent camera feed, Adrian could see the effect it had on Claire. The attorney took a half step backward. Sienna stepped forward. She said something one sentence short, direct. Claire's face changed. The confidence drained out of it like water from a cracked glass. Then Rachel moved. While Claire was focused on Sienna, Rachel sidestepped past her, walking calmly and deliberately toward the loading dock exit. She didn't run. She didn't look back. She walked with the steady pace of a woman who had decided she was leaving, and nobody was going to stop her. Claire turned and reached for Rachel's bag. Sienna caught Claire's wrist. On the camera feed, the two women were locked in a frozen moment. Sienna's hand around Claire's wrist, Claire's arm extended, Rachel walking away with the hard drive and the messenger bag. It lasted maybe 3 seconds. Then Sienna let go. She said one more thing to Claire, turned, and walked after Rachel. Claire stood alone in the corridor. She didn't follow. She watched them go, her phone still in her hand, her face unreadable. Adrian's phone rang. Sienna. "We're out," she said. She was breathing hard. "Rachel has the drive. We're at the loading dock." "What did you say to her?" "I told her that the photograph was taken from outside Adrian Hayes's property through a private window without consent, which makes it inadmissible in court and also constitutes criminal surveillance in the state of Pennsylvania. I told her that if that image appears anywhere in a courtroom, in a boardroom, in a newspaper, I will personally ensure that she is disbarred, arrested, and prosecuted." And the second thing, the thing that made her face change, Sienna paused. "I told her that I know about the Cayman accounts." "What Cayman accounts?" "Victor and Claire have been moving the Mercer Bridge money through a series of shell companies into offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. I found the routing numbers in Victor's email 6 months ago. I've been sitting on them because I didn't have enough evidence to prove the connection, but Claire doesn't know that. She just knows that I know the accounts exist." "So you bluffed." "I played the only card I had. And it worked. It worked for about 5 minutes, which is all we needed." Her voice dropped. "Adrian, the photograph. I'm sorry. Don't. If that gets out..." "It won't. You just told Claire exactly what would happen if it does." "I was bluffing about the Cayman accounts. I wasn't bluffing about the photograph. If she releases it, I will burn her career to the ground." Adrian believed her. In that moment, he believed her more than he had believed anyone since Karen. "Where are you going now?" he asked. "Rachel's taking the drive to a secure location. She has a friend at the University of Pittsburgh, a professor in the computer science department. He has a forensic analysis lab. She's going to have him verify the data integrity, timestamp the shadow backups, and create a certified chain of custody so the evidence is admissible. Tonight, he owes her a favor, a big one apparently. Rachel has a lot of friends in useful places. Rachel has been preparing for this fight for 2 years. We're just catching up." Adrian leaned back in his chair. The camera feeds were still on his laptop. Claire had left the corridor. The building was empty again. Phil was still asleep at the front desk. "Sienna, there's something I need to tell you." "What?" "The pregnancy test." The line went silent. "This morning after you left, I was looking for something in the dresser. Karen's dresser. I haven't opened her drawer since she died. I've been keeping everything the way she left it, like some kind of shrine, I guess. He paused. I found a pregnancy test. Positive. It was dated 3 weeks after her funeral. Adrian, that's not possible. The date on the test was 3 weeks after she died, which means either the date is wrong or someone put it there after she was gone. Why would someone? I don't know. I found it this morning and I shoved it in a drawer because I couldn't deal with it. Not with you in my bed and Victor threatening Mia and the whole world falling apart, but it's been eating at me all day. Do you think it's connected? I don't know. Maybe I'm paranoid. Maybe I've spent too many hours today thinking about conspiracies and cover-ups, and nothing is what it seems. Maybe Karen bought a pregnancy test before she got sick and the date got smudged and I'm reading it wrong. But you don't believe that? No, I don't. Another silence. Through the phone, he could hear Sienna driving the hum of tires on asphalt. We'll figure it out, she said. After tomorrow, after we deal with Victor, we'll figure out the pregnancy test and the night we don't remember and all of it. You keep saying we. Is that a problem? Adrian looked at the ceiling. He could hear Mia shifting in her bed above him, the small sounds of a child settling deeper into sleep. No, he said. It's not a problem. Get some sleep, Adrian. Tomorrow is going to be a long day. I don't think I can sleep. Then sit with your daughter. Watch her breathe. Remember why you're doing this. I remember every second of every day. I know you do. That's why I called you. That's why whatever happened last night, wherever my mind went when I lost my memory, some part of me knew to go to you. Because you're the kind of man who would fight for a person he barely knows, just because it's the right thing to do. I'm fighting for Mia. You're fighting for Mia, and for Rachel, and for Dana Morrison, who you've never even met, and for me. Her voice softened. Whether you want to admit it or not. He didn't answer. Good night, Adrian. Good night, Sienna. He hung up and sat in the dark kitchen for a long time. The laptop screen had gone to sleep, the camera feeds replaced by a blank blue glow. The house was quiet. The clock on the stove read 11:47 p.m. He picked up his phone and looked at the photograph one more time. The two of them in his bed, the morning light, the angle that made it look like he was reaching for her. He studied it the way he studied engineering plans, looking for the flaws, the tells, the details that didn't fit. And he noticed something. In the photograph on the nightstand next to the bed, there was a glass of water. He hadn't put a glass of water on the nightstand. He hadn't had anything to drink before bed. He didn't even remember going to bed. Someone had been in his house. Not just Sienna. Someone else. Someone who had placed a glass of water on the nightstand, positioned Sienna in the bed, and taken a photograph through the window. Someone who had staged the entire scene. Adrian set the phone down. His jaw tightened until his teeth ached. He walked upstairs and stood in Mia's doorway. She was sleeping on her side, her stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin, her breathing slow and steady. The nightlight cast a warm glow across her face. He sat down on the floor outside her room, his back against the wall, and he stayed there all night. He didn't sleep. He didn't close his eyes. He sat and he listened, and he waited for the morning, for the fight, for whatever was coming next. And when the first light of dawn crept through the hallway window and touched his daughter's face, Adrian Hayes was still there, exactly where a father should be, standing guard between his child and every shadow in the world. The text from Rachel came at 6:14 a.m. Data verified. Chain of custody certified. Every timestamp confirmed. Victor's fingerprints are all over it. Call me when you're ready. Adrian read it sitting on the hallway floor outside Mia's room, his back stiff, his neck aching, his eyes raw from a night without sleep. He read it twice, then a third time, letting each word settle into the place where fear had been living for the past 24 hours. He called Sienna. Did you get Rachel's text? He asked. I got it. What's the move? Board meeting. Emergency session. I still have the authority to call one. On a Sunday. When the CEO calls an emergency board meeting, people show up, even on a Sunday. What time? I'm sending the notice now, 10 a.m. Argent headquarters, main conference room. And Victor, he'll be notified like every other board member. If he doesn't show, that's his problem. If he does show, that's also his problem. Adrian stood up slowly, his joints popping, his body protesting a night spent on hardwood. I need to find someone to watch Mia. I already called Linda. She's expecting Mia at 9. Adrian paused. You called my neighbor. I called your neighbor. I told her you had an urgent work situation and asked if she could help. She said yes, and then she told me to make sure you eat breakfast. You don't get to manage my life, Sienna. I'm not managing your life. I'm trying to save it. There's a difference. He wanted to be angry, but the truth was, he was too tired and too grateful. Linda was the right call. Mia loved Linda. And right now, Adrian needed every minute he could get. Fine, he said. 10 a.m. Wear something decent. The board will be there. I own one suit. I wore it to my wife's funeral. Sienna was quiet for a moment. Wear it. Yeah. He showered for the first time in 36 hours. The hot water hit his shoulders, and he stood under it with his hands against the wall, letting the steam fill his lungs. He tried to organize his thoughts the way he organized a job site, materials here, tools there, tasks in order. But his mind kept circling back to the photograph, the glass of water on the nightstand, and the pregnancy test hidden in Karen's drawer. One thing at a time. Victor first. Everything else after. He put on the suit. It still fit, though the shoulders were tighter than he remembered. He knotted the tie 3 times before getting it right. Karen used to do this for him, standing in front of him, with her tongue between her teeth, pulling the knot until it was perfect. He could almost feel her fingers on his collar. Mia was sitting on her bed when he walked in, already dressed, her shoes on the wrong feet. You look fancy, she said. I have a meeting. At the place where you work. Yeah, at the place where I work. Are you going to be the boss? He almost smiled. Not exactly, but I'm going to stand up and say something important. Like a speech. Like a speech. Mommy said you hate speeches. Mommy was right, but sometimes you have to say the thing that scares you. That's what brave people do. Mia considered this with the gravity of a 6-year-old philosopher. Like when I told Tommy Greco to stop pulling my hair. Exactly like that. Tommy cried. Sometimes that happens. He fixed her shoes, brushed her hair, and drove her to Linda's. At the door, Mia grabbed his face with both hands again. You'll come back. Always, always, always. 3 always, she confirmed. She kissed his nose and ran inside. Adrian drove to Argent Infrastructure with both hands on the wheel and his jaw set tight. The building looked different on a Sunday morning. No cars in the lot, no people on the sidewalk, no hum of activity. It looked like what it was, a building made of glass and steel and concrete, held together by engineering and habit, and the assumption that the people inside it were honest. Sienna met him in the lobby. She was wearing a charcoal suit, her hair pulled back, her face composed in that boardroom mask he had seen so many times from across conference tables. But her eyes were different now. He could read them. He could see the fear underneath the control and the determination underneath the fear. Rachel is already in the conference room, Sienna said. She has the data loaded on the presentation system. How many board members confirmed? 7 out of 9. The 2 who didn't respond are traveling internationally. And Victor, he confirmed at 8:30 this morning. He asked what the meeting was about. I told him operational review. He bought that. Victor has no reason to think I'd call an emergency board meeting to expose him. As far as he knows, I'm still terrified, still scrambling, still controllable. She adjusted her jacket. He's about to learn otherwise. They walked together toward the elevator. Adrian felt the strangeness of it. The field supervisor in his funeral suit walking beside the CEO, about to blow up a conspiracy in front of the company's board of directors. 2 days ago, his biggest concern had been a leaky faucet in the upstairs bathroom. "Sienna," he said as they stepped into the elevator. "Yeah." "The pregnancy test. I keep thinking about it." "I know. Karen died of cancer. Ovarian cancer. She was diagnosed 8 months before she passed. By the time they caught it, it had spread." He paused, watching the floor numbers climb. "But before the diagnosis, before any of it, we were trying. For another baby. Karen wanted Mia to have a sibling." "Did she ever take a test?" "She did. About a week before the diagnosis. It was negative. She cried. And then 2 days later she was in the hospital, and we never talked about babies again. And the test you found yesterday was positive." "Positive. Dated 3 weeks after her funeral, which means either someone planted it in her drawer or there was a test she took that I never knew about." The elevator doors opened. They stepped out into the executive floor. "Why would someone plant a positive pregnancy test in your dead wife's drawer?" Sienna asked. "To mess with my head, to destabilize me, to make me question everything I thought I knew about my own marriage. That sounds like Victor." "That's exactly what I'm thinking." They reached the conference room door. Through the glass, Adrian could see Rachel sitting at the far end of the table, her laptop connected to the presentation screen. She gave them a small nod. 7 board members were seated around the table, most of them looking annoyed about being called in on a Sunday. Adrian recognized a few faces from company events, older men in expensive suits, a couple of women who radiated the same no-nonsense energy Sienna did. These were people who made decisions that affected thousands of lives, and right now they were checking their watches. Victor Hale was not in the room. "He's late," Adrian said. "He'll come," Sienna said. "He won't miss the chance to see if I'm panicking." They took their seats. Sienna at the head of the table, Adrian to her right, Rachel to her left. The board members exchanged glances. A field supervisor at an emergency board meeting was unusual, and Adrian could feel their curiosity like a physical weight. At 10:07, Victor Hale walked through the door. He was taller than Adrian expected. Or maybe it was the way he carried himself, shoulders back, chin up, the posture of a man who believed he owned every room he entered. He had gray hair cut short a tan that looked expensive, and a smile that showed too many teeth. Behind him, one step back, was Claire Whitfield, her blonde hair pulled into a tight bun, a leather briefcase in her hand. "Morning, everyone," Victor said, taking a seat across from Adrian. He nodded at Sienna, glanced at Rachel, and then his eyes landed on Adrian. He studied him the way a cat studies a mouse, with lazy interest and zero respect. "I don't think we've met," Victor said. "You are." "Adrian Hayes, field supervisor, Mercer Bridge Project." Something flickered across Victor's face. It was fast there and gone, but Adrian caught it. Recognition. Calculation. The quick recalibration of a man who suddenly realizes the chessboard has changed. "Of course," Victor said smoothly. "Good work on that project, by the way." "Thank you. I'm here to talk about it." Victor's smile held, but his eyes went flat. He looked at Sienna. "Is this the operational review?" "This is the operational review," Sienna said. She stood up. "Thank you all for coming on short notice. I've called this meeting because information has come to my attention regarding financial irregularities on the Mercer Bridge expansion project." The room shifted. Board members sat up straighter. 2 of them put down their phones. "Over the past 72 hours, Sienna continued, "we have obtained evidence that invoices submitted to the City of Pittsburgh for the Mercer Bridge project were altered after the project's completion. Material costs were inflated, subcontractor bids were modified, and approximately $1.8 million in discrepancies were funneled through a series of transactions that do not correspond to any legitimate company expenditure." Victor's expression didn't change. He leaned back in his chair and folded his hands. "Rachel, please show the board the original documentation." Sienna said. Rachel pulled up the first slide. Side by side, Adrian's original field reports next to the modified invoices that had been submitted to the city. The numbers were different. Clearly, unmistakably different. On the left, Rachel said, you'll see the original material delivery receipts signed by Field Supervisor Adrian Hayes, reflecting the actual quantities and costs recorded at the job site. On the right, the invoices submitted to the city showing inflated quantities and costs. These modifications were made on March 8, 2 years ago, 8 months after the project was completed. How do you know the exact date? One of the board members asked. Because every file modification on the Argent server is automatically recorded in a shadow backup system. Rachel pulled up the system logs. These logs show the precise time, user credentials, and terminal location of every change. The modifications to the Mercer Bridge invoices were made at 11:47 p.m. from a single terminal in this building. Whose terminal? The board member asked. Rachel looked at Victor. Mr. Hales. The room went very still. Victor uncrossed his legs and sat forward. This is absurd. Anyone could have used my terminal. Credentials can be shared stolen. Your terminal requires biometric authentication, Rachel said. Fingerprint scanner. Installed 18 months ago at your request. Victor's mouth opened, then closed. Claire Whitfield leaned over and whispered something in his ear. Victor shook his head slightly. I'd like to address the board directly, Victor said, his voice hardening. This is clearly a coordinated attack on my reputation. Ms. Blake has been struggling with leadership challenges for months, and I believe this is an attempt to deflect from her own performance issues. Furthermore, he turned to Adrian. The presence of a field supervisor in this meeting is highly irregular. Mr. Hayes has no standing to participate in board-level discussions. Mr. Hayes is here, Sienna said, because his name was placed on fraudulent documents without his knowledge or consent. He has every right to face the person who did it. This is speculation. It's not speculation, Victor. Sienna's voice dropped to a register Adrian hadn't heard before, low, steady, final. We have the server logs. We have the shadow backups. We have the timestamps. We have your biometric authentication records. And we have the routing numbers for the offshore accounts where the money was sent. Victor's face changed. The tan seemed to pale. His jaw worked silently for a moment. What offshore accounts? He said. The ones in the Cayman Islands. The ones Claire set up through 3 shell companies registered in Delaware. Sienna didn't blink. Would you like me to read the account numbers into the record, or would you prefer to save the board that particular embarrassment? Claire's hand tightened on her briefcase. She started to stand. This meeting is over. My client will not. Sit down, Ms. Whitfield, said a board member named Harold Price, a 70-year-old man with white hair and the demeanor of a hanging judge. Nobody is leaving until we've seen all the evidence. Claire sat. Adrian watched Victor's face. He had spent his career reading structures, knowing where the stress points were, where the load was too heavy, where the cracks would appear first. And right now, watching Victor Hale, he could see the exact moment the structure started to fail. It wasn't dramatic. It was a slight tremor in the hands, a tightness around the eyes, the almost imperceptible lean backward of a man whose foundation had just been pulled out from under him. There's one more thing, Adrian said. Every head turned toward him. Victor's eyes locked on his. Adrian pulled out his phone and held it up. At 12:44 a.m. last night, I received a text from a blocked number that referenced my 6-year-old daughter by name. It was a threat, implied but clear. He read the text aloud. You should be more careful about who sleeps in your house, Adrian, especially with a daughter like Mia. That's my daughter. Adrian said, his voice steady, despite the earthquake inside him. She's 6. She likes purple horses and grilled cheese with the crusts cut off and Charlotte's Web. And someone in this room thought it was appropriate to use her name as leverage. The silence that followed was the loudest thing Adrian had ever heard. Harold Price turned to Victor. Did you send that message? Absolutely not. Then you won't mind if our legal team subpoenas your phone records. Victor didn't answer. "I'll take that as consent," Harold Price said. He looked at Sienna. "Ms. Blake, what are you recommending?" "Immediate suspension of Victor Hale and Claire Whitfield, pending a full forensic audit. All access credentials revoked. All company devices surrendered. And a referral to the FBI for investigation of wire fraud, embezzlement, and witness intimidation." "The FBI?" Victor stood up so fast his chair rolled backward and hit the wall. "You can't be serious. This is a corporate matter. $1.8 million stolen from a publicly funded infrastructure project is a federal matter," Sienna said. "You told me that yourself. Remember." She hadn't told Victor that. Adrian had told her that in the parking garage less than 24 hours ago. But she delivered the line with such precision that Victor's face contorted with confusion, and for the first time, Adrian saw something in Victor Hale he had never expected to see. Fear. Not the calculated strategic fear of a man assessing risk. Real fear. The kind that lives in your chest and whispers that everything you've built is about to collapse. "This meeting is over," Claire said again, standing and pulling Victor's arm. "We're leaving." "You're free to leave," Harold Price said, "but your access badges stay on the table." Victor stared at the old man, then at Sienna, then at Adrian. His eyes moved from one to the next like a trapped animal looking for a gap in the fence. There was no gap. He unclipped his badge and threw it on the table. It slid across the polished surface and stopped in front of Adrian. "You have no idea what you've done," Victor said, looking directly at Adrian. "You're a field supervisor. You're nobody." Adrian picked up the badge and looked at it. Victor Hale Fiv, P of Operations, Argent Infrastructure. He set it back down. "I'm nobody," Adrian agreed. "I'm just a guy who builds bridges and makes pancakes and reads bedtime stories. But you made one mistake, Victor. You said my daughter's name. And nobody says her name and gets away with it." Victor left the room. Claire followed. Their footsteps echoed down the hallway fast and uneven, the sound of people who were already running, even though they were still walking. The board members erupted into urgent conversation. Harold Price was on the phone. Two others were huddled with Rachel reviewing the data on her laptop. Sienna was standing at the head of the table fielding questions, issuing instructions, being exactly the CEO she had always been. Adrian walked out of the conference room. He found a quiet hallway near the stairwell and leaned against the wall. His hands were shaking. His knees felt like water. The adrenaline that had been holding him together for 36 hours was draining out of him all at once, and he felt hollowed out, scraped clean like a pipe after the pressure drops. Sienna found him 5 minutes later. "Hey," she said. "Hey, the board voted unanimously to suspend Victor and Claire. Harold is contacting the FBI field office in Pittsburgh right now." "Good. You did it. We did it. You and Rachel did most of it. You sat in that room and told 9 of the most powerful people in Pennsylvania that someone threatened your daughter, and you looked Victor Hale in the eye while you did it." She paused. "That wasn't nothing, Adrian." "Mom." He slid down the wall and sat on the floor, his knees drawn up, his elbows resting on them. He looked up at her. "I need to go get my daughter," he said. "I know. And I need to go home and sleep for about 3 days. I know that too. And at some point, I need to figure out the pregnancy test, and the night we don't remember, and what all of this means." Sienna sat down next to him on the floor, her charcoal suit against the industrial carpet, her shoulder almost touching his. "Can I tell you something?" she said. "You're going to anyway. Last night when you told me to get the drive and get out when I was standing in that corridor with Claire, I was terrified. My legs were shaking. I couldn't feel my hands. And then I read your text, and something shifted. It wasn't the words. It was the fact that someone was watching. Someone was there, even if they were miles away, sitting in a kitchen with a sleeping child upstairs." She looked at him. "I haven't had that in a long time. Someone being there. Don't make this into something it's not, Sienna." "I'm not making it into anything. I'm just saying thank you." "You're welcome." They sat on the floor in the hallway of the Argent Infrastructure building. Two people who had been strangers 48 hours ago. And the silence between them was different now. It wasn't the tense silence of the parking garage or the watchful silence of the camera feeds. It was the silence that comes after a storm, when the air is clean and the ground is wet and the damage is visible but survivable. Sienna. Yeah. When this is all done, the investigation, the FBI, all of it, I'm going to take Mia to the zoo. She's been asking to see the penguins. That sounds nice? You could come, if you want. Sienna looked at him. He looked at her. And something passed between them that neither of them named, because naming it would have made it too real, too soon, and they both understood that some things need time, the way bridges need foundations, not fast, not flashy, but deep and deliberate and built to hold. I'd like that, she said. Good. He stood up and offered her his hand. She took it, and he pulled her to her feet, and for a moment they stood close enough that he could smell her perfume, the same faint trace that had been on Karen's pillow yesterday morning, the scent that had started all of this. Then he let go. I'll call you, he said. I know you will. He walked down the hallway through the lobby and out into the morning. The sun was up. The air was cool. The city of Pittsburgh stretched out around him, gray and steel, and stubborn, built on rivers and bridges, and the kind of hard work that doesn't make headlines but holds the world together. Adrian drove to Linda's house. He knocked 3 times. Mia opened the door with chocolate on her face and a crayon behind her ear. Daddy. Ball. She jumped into his arms and he caught her, holding her tight against his chest, pressing his face into her hair. She smelled like cookies and soap and everything good and permanent in the world. How was your speech? She asked. It went okay. Did you say the scary thing? I said the scary thing. Are you still brave? Bill. He carried her to the truck and buckled her into her car seat. He got in the driver's side and started the engine. In the rearview mirror, Mia was already reaching for her coloring book. Yeah, baby, he said. I'm still brave. He pulled out of the driveway and drove home, the radio playing low, his daughter humming in the back seat, the Sunday morning light falling across the dashboard like a promise. Behind him, the Argent building grew smaller in the mirror. Ahead of him, the road was open and ordinary and his. He thought about Karen. He thought about the pregnancy test in the drawer, the question still unanswered, the mystery still waiting. He thought about Sienna sitting on the floor in a hallway, her shoulder almost touching his. He thought about Victor Hale throwing his badge on a table and Rachel Nguyen walking calmly through a dark corridor with the truth in her hands, and Claire Whitfield standing alone in an empty hallway, realizing that the architecture of her lies had finally cracked. He thought about bridges. Every bridge Adrian had ever built started the same way, with a hole in the ground, and a question: will this hold? You pour the concrete, you set the rebar, you test and measure and calculate. And then you step back and you trust the work, because that's all you can do. You trust the work, and you trust the ground, and you trust that the thing you've built will carry the weight it was meant to carry. Mia's voice came from the back seat. Daddy. Yeah. Can we go see the penguins this week? Adrian looked at her in the rearview mirror. She was looking back at him with Karen's brown eyes full of the uncomplicated trust that only a child can give, the kind of trust that asks nothing except presents, and pancakes, and 3 always. Yeah, baby, he said. We can go see the penguins. He drove home. He unlocked the front door. He made lunch. He sat at the kitchen table with his daughter, and he ate every bite because Linda was right, and Karen was right, and Mia was right. You have to eat, or your body gets grumpy. And somewhere between the grilled cheese and the apple juice and the purple horse Mia drew for him on a napkin, Adrian Hayes felt something he hadn't felt in 2 years. He felt like the ground under his feet was solid. Not perfect, not finished, not free of cracks, but solid. The kind of solid that holds